Before we get into this episode, I wanted to introduce one of the partners for the show, Move Pre-Workout. I've been using this over the last year and can massively see the benefit with all my training. And I thought I'd invite Tom along, who was involved in the formulation.
Cheers, Mark. Obviously delighted to be supporting the podcast. And so Move Pre-Workout, we've got a strength-based formula, but this one is specifically designed for endurance athletes. And it's one of the first of its kind. We're just focusing on really high quality ingredients that are going to benefit endurance performance of any kind. So yeah, we're really excited by the product and delighted to be supporting podcasts like yourself.
Oh, it's amazing. And this is something that you're specifically taking before your training, before your rides, to be in best possible shape. I'd encourage you to give it a try. Go to movepreworkout.com and for a 20% discount, put the word endurance in at checkout. On with the show. Well, very warm welcome to the Endurance Podcast. Hopefully this is not your first episode, but if it is, there's plenty else to catch up on. We are filming live at the Adventure Travel Show on day one in Islington, London. This is the fourth conversation. We've got Molly Weaver on the sofa. These blow-up Vango sofas, they've done as well. I was a bit worried when we got on blow-up sofas this morning, but it's been a great pop-up studio for Martin and myself. It's been a busy day one. The show is starting to quieten down towards the end of the day, as they say, leaving the best to last, Molly. We'll cover all sorts of things in this conversation, from your earlier career, pro racing, road racing, TT, and then British cycling, but then moving into, I guess, the world I know better, which is, I guess, the only person you're racing is yourself. You're out there taking on these amazing records, but in the world of ultra endurance, it's a real sort of inner race, which we'll get to. Before we do that, Martin, day one at the Adventure Travel Show, it's been a ton of fun. And in the context of Enjoy Travel, you've been busy with other stuff today as well. Give the listeners and viewers a quick insight as to what we've been doing at the show today.
So we've got a stand just to the left of us where we've been having a spin the wheel because we've launched our loyalty platform for the first time, which was a real race to get done in time. Literally the team, credit to them, were working till 2 a.m, then are waking in at 5 a.m. to try and get all the last bits and pieces live.
The power of the deadline.
Power of the deadline. So shout out to all the dev team. Well done everybody. Anthony, Smiko, Ash, Paul, Dan. Brilliant work. Aurelian as well. Thanks guys. And yeah, we've had huge interest. So the concept of the loyalty platform is every 10th is free. Hotels, car rental, experiences, airport parking and lounges, any combination of those. If you buy 9, you're going to get your 10th one free to the average of the last 9. So we think it's quite unique. So yeah, we've had to stand there trying to get people to sign up. You sign up, you log in, you get to spin the wheel and you get a prize and you get your first stamp free. And I think we didn't really know what to expect. We didn't have any preconceptions, but I think it's been popular and gone well.
It's Enjoy Travel, obviously partnering the Endurance Podcast series, but it goes without saying, fueling wanderlust and travel. I mean, the whole point, we've seen it on the Epics so far. I guess one of the reasons that you're interested in this, Martin, personally, is not just the fact that you're an avid bike rider pushing your ambitions, but also the fact that the unlock for you from a work perspective is just travel, getting out there, giving people the toolkit and the quiet confidence to take on amazing journeys. So good on you. It's been great to meet more of your team today. Right, without further ado, Molly, I would love to. The obvious place to start this conversation is with your epic round Britain record, and I say that because it's where I found out about you. I think it's where you came to a lot of people's attention for the first time, and also because I've got a personal connection, having done an around Britain. I did it as a it sounds slightly unfair to call it in this way, but a warm up to the world. I basically did a 3,000 mile lap of the UK, London to London via the coast, before I set out around the planet in 2017. And I found it absolutely horrendous. I mean, I was trying to average 240 miles a day when I was pedaling around the planet, and I couldn't do anything close to that around Britain because our coastline in the UK is up and down and up and down and in and out, and it's a brutal coastline when you try and ride it on the bike. And I wasn't trying to do what you did, which is like the proper verified record attempt, going for Nick Sanders' record back in the day, and that stood for a very long time. We'll maybe get to that record, but I've got a personal interest in this concept of cycling around Britain because I know how bloody hard that is. Why don't you take us right back to the start? And I noticed on your Wikipedia page something that connects your route into cycling with Martin here is that you both had a knee injury that brought you into cycling. Now I know it sounds a daft place to start, but give me your childhood origin story in sport, and then what were those formative years on the bike like?
Well, I guess I was always a sporty kid, but I'm really not into cycling at all. So my dad was a bike rider, which kind of like...
Put you off?
Yeah, I guess like the opposite of a pushy parent. Like he couldn't convince me even to like get on a bike. I think I was like, oh no, it's your world sort of thing. I sort of had the mountain bike as a little kid. Like I remember getting my first bike, but I didn't really ride a lot. And then I was a hockey player for years. That was kind of the sport that I fell into as a child, in like the youth scene and junior scene. And then, got a knee injury running, and the physio said, oh, you should try cycling or something low impact. And then one of my dad's best mates was like, oh yeah, you should ride. And I was like, oh, okay, you've said it now, so I'll go and do it. So I started going down like a little outdoor velodrome, and just sort of fell in love with it pretty quickly. It was one of those things where I guess I'd done lots of sport as a kid just because it was the sports you did at school and things. Whereas cycling was the first one where I was like, oh, I kind of independently love this. I kind of got bitten by the bug. And from there almost got carried on along in the system. It wasn't really like a thought that, oh, I'll keep going and I'll be on like national teams and I'll then try and make a career out of it. It wasn't really a thing at the time. It just sort of happened organically because that's just sort of like thing I got taken on the wave I followed sort of thing.
But you did, that's exactly what happened. I mean, having just, got bitten by the bug, you then did, have an amateur career, a professional career, raced in Europe, raced around the world. I find it interesting now because you've come back to focusing on ultra endurance, but I mean, that must be an incredible apprenticeship. I don't know which one you think was more professional, what you're doing now and smashing these amazing records, or what you were doing when you were what most people would consider pro, which was, racing for teams and racing all over the planet. But very few people in the ultra endurance world have the level of, formal training that you did, up to sort of, British team, racing at the top of your game in the UK, and that. Can you give for people who are listening to the Endurance podcast and maybe don't follow professional cycling outside of adventure cycling, can you give us a sense of what that gives you? Maybe some of the bits that aren't so good, but ultimately what you've taken from that life, road racing, time trialing, and the rest of it into what you're doing now, because it's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, I feel like, like you say, there's good and bad. I mean, you pick up bad habits, you pick up bad sort of like training things, and especially from an elite world that I guess has come a long way, but it's still quite a, closed circle. It's set in its ways in a lot of respects. I think mostly the thing that I think is a big advantage for myself is that I know my body really well. Like I've made loads of mistakes. I've done good things training-wise, I've done bad things training-wise. I think I've probably been as good as I could ever be at certain points in my life, and you know what it took to get there. You learn a lot about what's good training and bad training. You can read your body in a way, and I think that's really hard to get, is that thing with training where you can feel when you're doing the right sorts of things, you can feel when you're overdoing it, you can feel like where you need to improve. I think having done it from I was 18 when I turned pro, so I was really young, and I was 16 when I started taking it quite seriously. So I've had that sort of the formative years where you've learnt with your body, and actually a lot of the things that I look back on as big mistakes in my career, my career ended very young, not for good reasons. I didn't necessarily have a very smart career, I don't think, a very healthy career, but I made loads of mistakes, and you learn from that. You learn what didn't work for you, what is like psychologically the ways you don't thrive, and that's so useful, is then you can then play into those strengths really well, but you have to almost learn what your weaknesses were to do that. And I think that's kind of looking back, I guess, I've only arrived here because I had those years behind me.
Absolutely. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, I'm interested in the transition then from the racing stuff you did to obviously the record, super ultra massive distance around the coastline of Britain World Record. The comparables maybe to what I'm going to try and hopefully complete this year, which is a ride across the length of Europe. I think it's not quite as long as the coast record that you set. So yeah, I'm really interested in how you transitioned and what motivated you to go from racing into this ultra distance.
I think, when I retired, I took, quite a few years off the bike. I didn't ride at all for a number of years. So I obviously had the love for riding deep down till even after I retired, and I knew I could be good at it, so I kind of already had that confidence in it. But I stepped away, and then actually through absorbing like other people's adventures and following things like You Went Around the World, and other people were doing things that started to be more documented, started absorbing those sorts of things, and kind of I was sort of fell in love with the idea of there being like exploration and adventure alongside. In the racing and professional racing, it's so results oriented. You're not really looking at anything. You're not really having any experience outside of the race. So I was drawn to that idea that there was an adventure and an experience and a discovery, and there was competition in it. So you've got this kind of amalgamation of all of those things. And in my racing career, I'd always been better at stage racing. I'd almost seemed to get less tired than other people in stage races and things. And I enjoyed that sort of training and that sort of racing. So I kind of knew that maybe that's where my strengths were, even in that context of it in the more mainstream sport. So I just thought, I can play into it and just see where it goes. And if it doesn't work out from a competitive standpoint, you've still had this incredible journey. And I kind of was lacking that, I guess, in my former career.
And did you build up to the big record, or did you just wake up one day and think that's what I'm going to do? Or did you like I'm doing? I started 2 years ago. I rode around the perimeter of Yorkshire, which is 450 miles, and then I kind of trebled that and rode from Leeds to Nice last year, trebling it again next year or this year now to do the length of Europe. Did you just go for it, or did you build up to it in something that grew?
Yeah, so I'd already ultra raced a fair bit, and I'd done quite a lot. I do all disciplines, but I'd done quite a lot of road 2 years ago. So I'd sort of done some longer ultras, so I had a bit of a feel for that. And I'd had in the back of my mind for a while that I really wanted to go for some kind of a record, but I've kind of discovered in this world that you have to really just want something and fall in love with the idea of it. You can't force it. You can't go and find a record and then just hope you want to do it. It's almost like, the same with racing. There's some races that you just want to do and you can't explain why you want to do them, and others that you don't, and there's no reason for it. So I wasn't forcing it. I was just going to see if something came, and I was MENA raced Transcontinental 2 years ago, which is the big ultra across Europe on road bikes, and I broke my foot a week before the race, so I was just sat at home and I was feeling really dejected and kind of, I've got nothing to do now, and just started looking up maybe not even a record, maybe a big bike ride that I could do instead, maybe once I was back riding, and started seeing things about maybe go around England, or maybe coast to coast something, and then I just stumbled across this world record, this round Britain record, and yeah, I guess I built up to it almost accidentally, and then it just felt like, I think once you can do 500k, you can do 1000k. Once you've done 1000, you can do 2000. It's all you can extrapolate from those efforts. So I was just kind of drawn to it and fell in love with this idea of this and the history of it, and then actually I didn't think too much about the fact that it was so much longer, because it was just what I wanted to do.
It's funny because in the UK, it's so blindingly obvious around the coastline of Britain, and yet it's not really built up as one of the big events once you sort of talk about it and think about it, but it hadn't been touched for a very, very long time. Unlike the Land's End record or the Lajoggle record, as Sarah Ruggins, or the North Coast 500 records, which have become these sort of iconic record attempts outside of the racing scene, where there's lots of people going together, like say GB Duro. So I'm interested, because when I looked at it, Guinness World Record won't touch it. Is it WUCA?
No, it's Guinness now.
Is it Guinness now? So Guinness wouldn't touch it back in 2017. And how you define the coastline of Britain is one of the challenges, which is maybe we can come back to, because you can take the little B roads and C roads which take you down every coastal path, or you can do what I ended up doing, which is the big A roads and just trying to cover the miles and go as fast as possible, but you lose the coast quite often. And not just is the mileage massively different, but fundamentally the smaller roads, your elevation gain is huge. I'm maybe going to park the Round Britain for a second and come back to it, because before we get stuck into that, if you're willing to talk about it, I'd love to pick up on where you were in sort of 2017, 2018. So the end of your racing career, you had a big crash.
Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned before that your racing career came to a premature end. You've now got sort of success under your belt off the back of what you've gone on to do. But can you take us back to how you felt about it at the time? Because you've always talked very positively about cycling, but I don't think you could say the same for maybe some of the sort of the pressures and the culture that went around it. I think your love of the bike was always there, but can you take us back to that point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to keep racing my bike in the way that I was. You've got a serious crash to recover from. What was happening in your life at that point? As I say, is it possible to tell that story without the hindsight of what you've now gone on to do?
Yeah, I think by the end of my career, so like, yeah, around sort of, maybe like, so I crashed in 2016, 2017. I feel like I'd already lost the love of riding just for riding's sake. I didn't really have that anymore. It was more riding for like the success of it and in racing. And I think, so I had this big crash. I was hit by a car and broke, I think, like 15 bones or something in my back and my neck, and I was in a really bad way, obviously, physically from that.
Let's pause on this. You didn't break your pinky, you broke your neck.
I broke my neck, my skull, my back in 5 places, my sternum,
broke your skull.
my ribs, my collarbone, collapsed
Wow.
both my lungs, yeah. So it's a pretty big crash, yeah.
And if you don't mind asking, how was that caused? Was it a driver just not looking, or what happened?
Yeah, we don't actually know, because I was unconscious for quite a lot, like hours, and I don't have any memory really from that morning onwards. So I don't remember the crash itself.
Right.
It happened on a descent. I mean, I was descending, the car was going up. It's a twisty mountain road, so
Okay.
I mean, we don't know what happened. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, the physical injuries, obviously they're hard to overcome. I mean, I still have a lot of like issues in my back and stuff from that you don't really come back from that. You're not the same body you were before. It doesn't fix like perfectly. But I think for me, I think I was already maybe a little bit, like my mental health wasn't great. I was already maybe a little bit on the edge of it all going wrong, and then that was such a catalyst for so many other things. I mean, I had lots of bad habits, bad training patterns, like bad eating patterns, and then this big thing happened that disrupted all these very carefully managed things that I was kind of clinging on to this very strict way that I did everything, and it was all perfect. And that was kind of my coping mechanism. I was so inflexible. I was so impatient. I was so like everything had to be exactly right. It was always like touted by like coaches and managers and stuff. I was like, oh, you're so committed. It's so impressive. But it's not. It's like at a certain point you tip over into this like really unhealthy relationship with things. It can't be that perfect all the time. It can't be that everything has to be micromanaged to this like massive like nth degree, this extent.
But I think we should pause on that, because a lot of people who are training either as amateurs or pros, it is about sort of fine-tuning, and whether it's nutrition, sleep patterns, bike setup, you know, people pride themselves on that detail and that routine. But you're actually alluding to the fact that within that knowledge and within those habits that you create, you actually need to have a level of sort of kindness and flexibility. So I don't know if there's more to be said on that. I feel that there is, because a lot of people listening and watching who are pushing their ambitions in the endurance world will think that it is about being a perfectionist. So how do you think about perfection in the but also being kind to yourself, you know, living a life that is not just good for other people to watch, but is actually good for you to live?
Yeah, I think there's perfection like within certain aspects. You can be as perfect as one can be. Things that are really controllable. It also depends from what you are seeing as is your view of perfection biased by something. So I mean, when I was racing, for example, we were in like the no carb era. We were in the like you eat nothing, you're as light as you can be. So perfection within that is very different to perfection now in like the carb revolution of cycling. So I think you're perfect in the sort of moment in time you're in, but actually everything changes, everything's always transient, and there's always even things that seem perfect. And I think I mean, especially with this sort of riding versus, I guess, in professional riding, things were so highly controllable. So to an extent, you could be perfect in some ways. But I mean, you'll know from these sorts of rides, so much happens that you have to have an element of flexibility, because even the most perfect plan, it's not actually, like, things are going to go wrong, things are going to change. Even in a training plan, I think, you could want to go out on your bike one day and then there's like horrendous ice. Or you could go out and you might get away with it. Maybe you'll crash and break a bone. Maybe you have to train indoors. You have to have some level of, even if you still got a great training session that day, you have to be able to let go of it being this like exact thing it was supposed to be. And I think I had an inability to let go of the exact thing it was supposed to be, and that's where you tip over and into an unhealthy perfectionism. And I mean, maybe I also wasn't the right person to be in the sport in that way. I think we all have different mentalities. We all thrive in different environments. And I think a lot of it is about knowing yourself. Like some ultra riders, they thrive in it being, so regimented. Their stops are exactly timed, and they're incredible at that. They can cope with that. They can cope with this exact 20-minute sleep and this thing. And others are really chaotic, and that's how they are incredible athletes, is that they just go with the flow and they don't mind when stuff goes wrong. And I think you have to find your rhythm and what you as an individual are like as a person. Otherwise, if you follow someone else's blueprint, it's never going to work out unless you just happen to be identical to them somehow.
Yeah, there's many different ways of doing it.
And how has your chase for perfectionism changed then from pre the crash to now, to the latest record? Has it had to change a lot? Have you been in search of, have you had to have that perfectionism to train for your world record, or have you had to do the opposite and let go of it?
Yeah, I was incredibly strict for the record. Until this record, actually, I was quite a casual trainer. I wasn't too formal with it. I wasn't too strict with it. This was kind of the first time, I guess, I let myself do something that was so black and white, success or failure, that was so kind of, I either get a record or I don't. I mean, in ultra racing, you can want to win, but you don't even know who else is going to be there. So much happens, especially with unsupported stuff. There's so many other variables that you can be a bit more flexible and fluid with stuff, whereas this I knew was going to be so highly fine-tuned and was controllable to some extent, that I guess I trained in quite a formal way. But I also had a coach that I had sort of chosen that I knew she was going to work really well with kind of my baggage from my former career and how I was as a person. And we were I was very harsh with myself through it, but I also have, I guess, a self-awareness now of what I'm like as a person. And like I said before, I've made so many mistakes that I do look back on, and I know that they were errors. So I'm not just going to remake them now. I guess I've maybe grown up enough to not make the mistakes again and work with who I am as a person a bit better.
Carry on.
And how much? So, what was the gap then from deciding you wanted to go and take on this record? The moment when you thought, I'm definitely going to start working on this and go for it. How long did you then give yourself to train, and how much planning went into that, and what was the training regime? And can you tell me some detail about it?
Yeah, so it's the back end of summer that I first sort of started thinking about seriously doing it. 2024, yeah. 26 now, 24. Yeah. And I spent a couple of months really just crunching numbers on if I thought it was possible. I worked out that it was completely impossible, I wasn't going to bother going for it. So just analysing my former training and other rides, I'd done races, is it something that I think is feasible for me? And then maybe around September, we kind of went, okay, I think on paper this is doable. It's sort of 50-50, but it's doable. And then I decided to go for it. And then I raced actually Trans-Pyrenees, an ultra that goes across the Pyrenees and back. And then maybe that's in October. And then November I started training for the coast, and I did it in mid-June. Okay. So November to mid-June I was training for it. So
quite topical at the minute then, because it's middle of January, it's absolutely freezing. Yeah. I'm from Yorkshire and there was snow. Been quite a bit of snow, not massive, but quite a bit of snow, and it's pretty horrible riding at the minute, going out for a 5, 6, 7 hour ride. How was your winter training regime, or did you keep it low level, or did you build it up from February? Or
I didn't do massive volume until we were sort of into spring, so I was a lot more structured than because I had a coach for this and I had a coach for a while. There's a lot more structure and strength work than I thought there might be.
Okay, that's interesting.
Obviously strength work in terms of the gym for pure muscle and strength, but also for injury prevention. A lot of stuff just being in the time trial position for so long, your neck, your upper body, just building up energy, all those sorts of things. And then, a fair bit of structure, which you can obviously do on an indoor trainer and stuff, so you can avoid the weather a bit like that. And then, I started with 4 or 5 hour rides, and it wasn't until maybe when the turn of the weather, so maybe the start of spring, that I started going up to sort of the 10, 12 hours and then was doing those like back-to-back much longer ones.
Yeah.
I guess 'cause it's quite a long time. That's a long time. You don't want to be burnt out by the time you get to the start of it.
So you were doing 10, 12-hour back-to-back road rides.
Yeah.
From what, April? March?
Yeah, maybe April onwards.
And I mean, it's hard to find a training buddy when you're doing 10, 12-hour training rides.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
Yeah, I didn't ride with anybody the whole time, November to June.
And how did you find that in terms of motivation? It's one thing having the dream, it's another thing actually living those miles where...
Yeah.
No, when you're out there actually going for the record attempt, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But the miles that nobody sees.
Yeah, they're the boring ones.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's so helpful for the listener. Turning up at the event, having done the hard miles, the miles that people never see. You know, the early starts when you get on the turbo or whatever that is, and it's a personal choice because nobody's ever going to say well done for those miles. But it means that when you get to the event, not just have you got the training, but you've got the quiet confidence that you've done the hard bit.
Yeah.
Which is not true because clearly the unknown is the race itself. But I think what it takes to get to the start line is often the overlooked part. Everyone just bangs on about the event.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I agree, I think it's a lot harder to be motivated for it and to keep going, because, I mean, it wasn't ages, but November to June, it's quite a big part of your life, really, to be just training for one thing the whole time. And I started flipping, maybe a couple of months ahead, I started moving towards doing more recce rides, so I was actually riding with a purpose, and I found that a lot easier because you're going from like a point to a point. I was recceing a stretch of the coast. It was a journey in itself. I found that a bit easier because it did feel a bit more like the record, where you're on more of an adventure. It felt like I was doing something, whereas just doing a 12-hour loop from your house
miles
is
for the sake of miles.
Yeah, is much more boring. And I think maybe in the last month I started to really just get bored.
That's interesting. And I always find there's a point just before the race where you're basically ready, but you're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I always find mentally that last 2-3 weeks quite tough.
Yeah.
We're doing a 700-mile ride from the Scottish borders to Dublin in March. It's a bit of a training ride. And over the last couple of weekends, you've been wrecking part of the route. And just because you've been sharing content on it and you've had that purpose of I'm actually wrecking something that we're going to be doing, it does change your mindset, doesn't it?
It does, but again, it's just the weather, isn't it? It's
yeah,
horrible.
exactly.
The roads are horrible. Oh, I've had so many punctures as well. I've literally just gone tubeless for the first time, which I've not had a... Do you cross your fingers?
Yeah.
Touch wood?
Touch wood, yeah.
Touch wood. I've not had a puncture since I went tubeless, which has been a godsend. I've literally had rides where I've had 3 punctures in a ride in the last few weeks. It's been horrendous. It's just, you're right though. It gives some purpose rather than just thinking, I'm going to go and do this 100-mile loop that I've done 20 times already in the last few months, or this one, or this. There's like 400-mile loops I can do with very little differentiation. It's actually got a purpose. I'm going to head out, find the start point, actually look at the route and see what it's like, and so I can relay it back and make sure it's right. And then I've had the route slightly changed, so it actually comes through my village, which is going to be amazing. Like 300 riders coming through.
We're going to be about 300 riders,
and it's a tiny village.
And we're going to absolutely mob your local cafe. That's the plan.
But then, so carrying on. So I've done the northern part from the top of Yorkshire. So it comes through the whole of North Yorkshire, the whole of West Yorkshire, stops in Leeds and out into the Peak District. So I've done the part leading to my village from Scotland, so coming south. And then I've not done the part that goes out to the peaks yet, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. But I'd planned it a couple of times in the last 2 weeks, and it's just been too cold and too snowy and wet and windy.
It's getting the motivation.
Especially when you're going into the Peak District, it's 10 times worse.
It's funny, the Yorkshire bit for me, I'll be interested, Molly, to hear on your reflections, because my experience of around Britain, which was a slightly different route to yours, the hardest bit was quite near the start for me, which is the southwest. So, you sort of cruise along the south coast from London, lots of towns, lots of stuff to break up the ride, and then you sort of get to Devon and Cornwall. And for me, I had a couple of days there which were 5,000 metre days climbing, and it's not like Scotland where you're a long way up and a long way down. It's just like a shark's tooth, up, down, up, down, up, down, out, down. And so I found by the time I was going across the Severn Bridge and heading into Wales, my legs were just pretty ruined from the southwest of England, which is, in my experience, one of the harder bits. By the time I got around to down the east coast of Scotland, psychologically, I had the battle of going through home. So I went across the Tay Bridge in Dundee, some friends came out, my mum, crossed through Edinburgh, my family came out, I had to cycle past home, and then I was like, I just need to get back to London. And then the bit down to the Scottish borders is kind of fine, no big deal there. You go through the Northumberland bit, not too bad, and then you hit the Yorkshire coast. And for me, the Yorkshire coast was absolutely brutal. And it was really interesting because there's the ride as it exists in front of you, but there's also the expectation of the ride, the psychological bit, which is like, you're starting to get a bit relaxed and get that flow state, and then suddenly you hit. And I think the bit for me about the coastline of Britain was just, it was so attritional. I just found it so challenging. And I've actually got Nick Sanders' book from when he went around Britain. That was a long time ago. I mean, I'd say it's such an easy, simple concept, but there's not that many people who have actually gone from it. When did Nick do it?
Oh, it's 42 years ago or something?
Yeah, 42 years ago. So this is an amazing record to go for. So, I mean, I want to get to your reflections of how tough Yorkshire is, but also I want to get to your reflections of what is that record now, the waypoints that define the record. You've set the precedent now. I'll be interested to see what happens, because I've seen this where you go for a record that somebody's not touched for years, and then suddenly everyone goes, right, let's see if we can break Molly's record.
Well, I was thinking it the other day, actually.
Yeah. So talk us through the route, and then, I mean, I gave you a potted sort of history of my sort of the way I saw the chapters of the coastline. I'd love to know how you felt about it in those chapters.
Yeah, so I kind of had seen a couple of guys who had gone for it in the period between Nick Sanders doing it.
Which was what, 22 days?
22 days, 4 hours he did it in, yeah. And effectively, so we looked at it, and originally it wasn't Guinness for us either, so it was going to be WUCA. And then we started...
So for listeners, that's the World Ultra Cycling Association, because there's lots of ultra records that Guinness World Record don't govern, but WUCA has a much broader book of ultra records.
And effectively what we set about doing was let's try and we want to replicate as close as possible to his, so that it felt like an actual record-breaking attempt. Whereas if we just did something completely different and called it the coast, then it was it's not really breaking the same record. So basically using his book and the maps he'd drawn in that book, and also he talks about each day where he went to and from, so you could kind of piece together roughly. Obviously roads have changed a lot in 40 years,
and Britain's
changed a lot, but you could kind of roughly piece together what he must have done in as broad a stroke as you could. So we did basically sort of tried to plot roughly what he did, including his distance being used as the minimum distance. So that's how we came about it had to be 4,800 and something miles.
Which is great.
Or 7,732 kilometres. So it had to be at least as far as he went. And it had to take in as much as possible what he did. So that's why we also only did Anglesey as the only island, because he, for some reason, did Anglesey. So it was the mainland plus Anglesey.
And then I did Anglesey. It felt like such a stupid add-on. I'm sorry for the good people of Anglesey, but when you're going around Britain, I'm like, why am I doing a lap of this island?
Did you kind of get back to the end? You're like, I've gone nowhere.
Yeah, I've literally gone nowhere. Past the airfield, go around, go back onto
so that's sort of how we came about, sort of the principles of the route. And then when we went to submit it to WUCA and then hopefully to Guinness,
which is what we're doing.
Yeah, effectively their sort of the sort of way they do it is you have to use waypoints to define the outline of the circumnavigation. Yeah. So it has lots of the same rules, lots of other ones, so minimum distance, the fact you have to continuously be making some sort of progress. You can't just zigzag for a day on the easy stuff. And then, we had to use these hundreds of waypoints to outline, and that's how it keeps you close to the coast, is that, okay, you could choose whether to go on the A road or this little back road, but you had to go between these two waypoints. So, and you had to do a minimum distance. So actually you don't have that much choice then in what you do, because to dot them up in the right distance, you kind of have to stick to the outline quite closely.
The Endurance Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Enjoy Travel. Huge thanks for all that they do. And I don't need to introduce my co-host, but over to Martin Mansell to explain Enjoy Travel.
So Enjoy Travel brings you car hire, hotels, airport parking lounges with a loyalty platform, meaning you buy 9, you get your 10th free. And you can mix and match across any range of our products. You don't need to just buy 10 car hire, you could buy a hotel, a car hire. And we're giving you a special discount code to celebrate our podcast, which is RID3R, as in rider, and you'll get up to 30% off everything.
So click on Enjoy Travel. It's been amazing for these epics. Makes our travel so much more enjoyable and seamless. So thanks, Martin. Thanks, Enjoy Travel. And then those chapters. So I rattled through my recollections, and I have to say it's one of the hardest bike rides I've ever done around Britain. I've got so much respect for what you pulled off last year. But is it similar? Did you breeze through the southwest and find that easy, or?
So I think you started in London as well.
Yeah, I started.
So the
I
first...
sort of went from Gravesend, Kent, went all the way back around to the. Yeah.
So I found, getting out of London itself, that's just sort of a bit of a mess. But I did it at 4 a.m, so it was quite easy.
Yeah.
And then Devon and Cornwall, really hard. It was a heat wave when I did it as well, so it was just like that really muggy in the little lanes with all the cars.
Yeah.
It was really heavy traffic, really hard. That sort of 20% climb, 20% down, 25% out, 27%. It's just relentless. You don't get into a good rhythm. So I found that was difficult. Then really I found Wales it was a bit of a blur. I didn't really remember much of it. And I found it kind of okay, but I'd also recce'd it, so I knew it. So it felt quite familiar and comfortable. Then the lakes is quite easy because it's actually quite flat on the coast of the lakes.
It is. People don't realise the lakes on the coast is flat.
That was a pretty easy day.
Barrow and Furness and all
that. Yeah. And then Scotland, I had horrendous weather on basically the whole record.
Surely
I had awful
not.
weather, absolutely horrendous. I had a headwind every day but one for 21 days, which feels like that's not possible when you go round something. But the Highlands was horrendous, like torrential rain, 4 degrees, like gale force headwind. So
you had
that
a
was
heat
hard.
wave.
Yeah,
in Cornwall.
In Cornwall, and then just torrential rain the rest of the time.
Why am I proud?
Yeah, and then, but that I found Scotland, especially the West Coast, it was obviously incredibly hard, but you're so blown away by the scenery, and you're so busy, like, with the kind of grandness of it, and you feel like it's this epic adventure and this challenge that kind of psychologically I found it quite distracting. So I almost didn't find it as hard as I feared I would, because it just is this epic landscape. Like going up Blackna Bar, everyone bigs it up, but then you're just going up Blackna Bar, and I was doing things in relative terms. So on a flatter day, I had to ride further. So okay, you're going over Blackna Bar, but you can go slower that day. It's not like I had to go the same distance and also get over Blackna Bar that day. So it was kind of, I found it almost easier to suffer in the mountains and stuff. Then Northumberland I loved, that was beautiful. I found that quite an easy day as well. And then actually the East Coast, when it got flat, I was at the end, I was really tired, and it was so boring. It was just like dead flat roads, all looked the same.
Norfolk's pretty...
Norfolk, yeah. I think
we're just putting off all our listeners, but yeah.
I'm sure it's like a lovely place if you're not riding 18 hours and you're at week 3 of this ride. And it's 18 hours of just the same hedges and the same view, and you can't see anything. And I just started to mentally be so bored that like the time just stood still. So I found that really, really hard. The last maybe like 3 or 4 days, it was like just so, I guess so monotonous that you haven't got that distraction of this big climb you've got to tackle, or like in Devon and Cornwall, convoluted in and out of little coastal villages and all that sort of stuff.
There's lots of stuff punctuating your ride, whereas those days where there's nothing punctuating your ride, it just becomes the inner battle, which is a very different thing than the thing you can actually focus on.
How did you deal with the boredom then? Did you take some music with your podcast, or did you just have to... Could you have music? Like, for example, if you're going to a professional triathlon, you're not allowed to listen to any music. You're not meant to have your phone.
Yeah.
What did you do?
So my plan was mostly like podcasts and audiobooks. So my plan that just something distracting you from, just focusing on the suffering the whole time. And but actually, I could barely hear. The wind was so bad the whole time that it's like that noise of the headwind. So I almost didn't listen to anything just because I couldn't hear it. So and then you're quite mentally busy, I guess. Whether that's the navigation of it, especially in the more like convoluted areas, you're kind of navigating a town you don't know or a village you don't know. Or
I don't think people realise. You often hear that with the Land's End John O'Groats records as well. Like it's as much about the logistics and getting through the towns, and one silly mistake.
Too many traffic lights.
The UK is a busy old place.
Yeah.
It's not like crossing Mongolia. It's actually the logistics as much as the cycling.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you've had a fantastic day today. The Adventure Travel Show is now closed this evening.
Right, that's the end of the podcast.
That's your new outro.
So if you were to summarise then that phenomenal, amazing world record around the coastline of Britain, could you give us like just 1 or 2 of your best high moments and 1 or 2 of your best or worst low moments.
I like best low moments. That's good. That's good.
Best low moments
Best
and
low
worst.
moments.
Best and worst low moments.
Favorite low points.
Favourite low point. I mean, actually, my favourite low point might have been John O'Groats, because it was just quite funny that it kind of feels like a finish line, because
Yeah.
it's the finish line of so many things, and everyone who's there thinks you're finishing something. So people are like, oh, wow, and you're like, no, I'm nowhere near done. And I remember I just had this massive breakdown at John O'Groats. I was just like crying in the van. It had been an awful day. I just had a really bad day on the bike. The weather had been awful, and it was kind of difficult that it wasn't the finish line, because it feels like the finish line. And then my crew was like, oh, but we do need to get the photo by the signpost. So then you're like there crying, like trying to pose, like pretend you're having a great time at the signpost. And we just end up laughing about all these like stupid
But it must be
moments.
like 2/3 of the way or something. It must have been some sort of milestone.
I don't know. I think I kind of struggled with all the milestones. Like when people are like, oh, you're halfway. It's like, yeah, but I've still got so far to go. Like all those things, it could go wrong on the last day. So you're
every day's so big.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
That's such an interesting point that you're both making, because when you're watching this, you keep the macro view on it, the halfway, three-quarters way. But when you're in it and everyone goes, well done, and it doesn't matter, because when you're on the bike, you're just thinking about the next 4 hours. You're just thinking about the next thing. So the fact what happens tomorrow or next week just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
even on the last days, people are like, oh, you've done it now. You're like, no,
Yeah.
not until you're back
Oh,
on
God.
that. Something could happen in the last 10 minutes. You're kind of, it's the sort of, but yeah, I mean, there was lots of, in the weather, there was loads of funny moments. You had to laugh. Like a lot of the time, we just had to laugh, because it was, you can't do anything else. You're stuck in the weather you're stuck in, or the situation is the situation. So
Sounded like you had proper extremes in terms of the weather as well.
yeah, it was that heat wave in Devon, Cornwall, so maybe 3 days. It was extreme, and then the crew was having to try and get me ice and all those things. And then within a week, you're in freezing temperatures in the torrential rain. So it's kind of.
How did you deal with people coming out? Because it did get quite a lot of press at the time. I know a few people that came out of Edinburgh to try and catch you as you crossed the bridge and stuff. So did you like that? Did you find it distracting?
That was a massive highlight, actually. I was going to say I didn't really have anyone ride with me. You're partly not really allowed, and
Yeah.
I didn't really want that anyway. I wanted to just be able to focus on it
Stay in
and
your
ride my
bubble.
pace, and especially on the roads, almost the fact someone's next to you and they've got to go behind. It's a bit just, you want to just be able to not worry about the cars and and all those sorts of things. But the dot watches, like people coming out, I absolutely loved it, which I didn't know if I'd like it. I originally, on the way we were driving to London, I was thinking, I almost don't want people to come out. I don't want the stress of it, and I don't know what I'll say to them, or like will I wave. I almost was overthinking this whole interaction, but it was absolutely amazing. You spend, even with a crew, you spend most of the time completely by yourself, and you're in this like what is quite stressful bubble, because you're constantly thinking about times and average speeds and all these variables, and then these people that I didn't know and had never met would just be there like cheering you on at the roadside and like calling your name, and like little kids would come out with signs and they'd be cheering, and yeah, it was this something I hadn't experienced before, because I normally race unsupported, like niche weird things that people don't even know are happening, that I suddenly had this thing of, all these people I don't know really want me to achieve this thing. Like it's normal for your family and friends, like if you're lucky that you have these family and friends that want something amazing to happen for you, but it's rare some random person cares that you're doing something. And I'd suddenly have these moments where in this isolation I'd have these people like punctuating it with like, these people really think I can do this and want me to do this, and they're backing it, and I don't know, it gave you this massive lift, and it's like such a privilege to have people care that you achieve something and want it for you. It's like, it's a really beautiful thing that kind of, I guess, brought all these people together in this weird ride I was doing.
Dot watching's a real thing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
It's very cool, very, very cool. And I think, Martin, you've seen that with your big rides over the last couple of years. You do it for wonderfully selfish reasons, but then, the ripples, how it affects other people, starting with friends and family, but also then people, work colleagues and other people who find out about what you're doing. It's really interesting what their relationship with your challenge is. It could be through, for example, the charities, but sometimes it's just the sheer endeavour of it. The scale of the challenge and sort of living vicariously through your ambitions. Really cool. But then it becomes that really strange bit of like how you see yourself and then how other people see you. You then finish and people invite you on podcasts and ask you, what do you make of that? And you're still trying to make sense of it yourself.
Yeah.
So we have just turned the page into to 2026. We've got this 6,000. I'm still struggling to get my head around the fact that our ride, the length of Europe north to south, is less than what you did around Britain. That shows you how complicated our coastline is around Britain.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it?
I'm not a huge fan of the what's next question, so I'll just simply ask you, your reflections at the start of the year on the year that was. It was certainly the year that I sort of learnt of your raw talent on the bike, which was really cool to see. And yeah, just what are you up to at this point?
Yeah, I've had a bit, which I guess maybe you'll also relate to, of sort of, I guess the what's next for me, that I've had that same question mark over it, because this was almost not a one-off, but for me it was a very new thing to do. It wasn't like I'm in the rhythm of doing these things. And I finished it, and actually I was so tired that I took months off. My body was so destroyed.
Right.
And then I've kind of floated around in this bit of aimlessness, and I'm just sort of finding my feet again with maybe what I want to do. So I'm sort of taking I guess not a step back, but a bit of a more chilled year. I'm not doing like a really big project. I mean, for me it was, financially, emotionally, everything, it was a big investment to do that for a year. So yeah, I'm doing a couple of things in the Highlands. I'm racing Highland Trail 550.
Oh, you didn't need to see.
Yeah,
Cool.
and then at the other end of the year, I'm going for the NC 500 world record. So
Oh, cool.
I want to kind of see if I can maybe, if it happens, win Highland Trail. So to sort of do the mountain bike Highlands, and then if I can
Yeah.
get the record, do the road Highlands. I think it's quite a cool, like.
Are you
mirror
going for
image
the
of
women's
each other.
record or the all-out record?
Oh, the women's, to calm down.
I know another woman going for the.
I do as well, yeah. Which
record.
I didn't know at the time, but now, hopefully she'll lower it and it'll just make it more exciting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's swap notes on that one. Right. Over to you, Martin, for any last thoughts, if I can put you on the spot.
Yeah, well, I've asked this to most of the super endurance riders that we've chatted to through these podcasts. When are you going to take Mark Beaumont's around the world record off him?
Why isn't Lael going for it? We'll let her go for it first.
There's at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Lael, Lachlan, and possibly Sarah. I love the fact that 2 of the 3 are women as well.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that these ultra records, shouldn't be smashed by the women. We saw that with Sarah. We've seen it with Jasmine Paris in the running world and others. I love that. Ultra cycling, ultra running, ultra swimming. It's the whole ethos of the Endurance podcast. Young, old, male, female, we can all go further. And, having been involved in ultra endurance sports for 20 years, I love how, we're just seeing people with all sorts of different backgrounds, at different ages, just pushing their ambitions. And it doesn't need to be for breaking records, but it's really cool to have been a part of this world for 20 years and just seeing so many inspiring athletes coming through, figure out what they're capable of, and then passing on the baton, sharing their stories. That's what we're trying to do with the podcast, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah.
Within that, take on some pretty interesting events ourselves. So we've got the big ride to Dublin as a warm-up ride, 700 miles, and then Jenny Graham and Hamish Graham joining us for the epic, the length of Europe. So you're lucky you said you were taking an easy year, or we'd be roping you into race the length. Be careful what you say yes to at this point. But as I say, I only came across your ambitions with the Round Britain. I'm sure 2025 was the breakthrough year for a lot of people who have been following your adventures. No pressure on what you go on to do next, but if people do want to follow, if people want to find out more, how do we follow Molly's adventures?
Yeah, I guess just Instagram's the only one I have. I'm pretty simple to follow. It's just Molly Weaver 94. So adding my age there as well, but
Okay. I would encourage everyone to follow Molly. You're always incredibly authentic and honest about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So keep on keeping on. And loads of good stuff in that conversation for you and I as we go big
Yeah,
this summer.
absolutely. Learning something in every podcast we've done so far.
Yeah. They are literally packing up the trade show around us. So we're going to bring this to a close. Molly, thank you so much. Love that conversation, and I look forward to staying in touch.
right, thanks for having me and good luck with your big ride.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. What an inspiration. Whenever somebody comes on to the pod who I can relate to through a similar ride, I'm always intrigued with how they think differently about it. And the Round Britain genuinely is one of the hardest rides I've ever taken on. So the fact that Molly smashed it broke the record after 40 plus years is nothing short of properly inspiring. So thank you, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Another fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you did, then please subscribe, press the button, write a comment, share it with your friends.